Has Google declared that Muhammad is the greatest man of all time? Let's take a closer look at the latest miracle of Islam. If you would to Google, who is the greatest character or person or man in the history of mankind, Muhammad is the number one basically result of that search. Is Muhammad really the greatest basically man in the history of mankind? Is this a real miracle that even Google cannot resist? Well, I can tell you this as a former Muslim, the only miracle here is the miracle of reinterpreting things. With me here to explain why, our dear brother David Wood.
Well, you know, this is a classic Islamic miracle where they actually invent their own miracle, not realizing it. And then they don't understand that they basically invented their own miracle. And this is actually hilarious. Like, I can't think of anything more hilarious than this miracle that they've invented. So the claim is that if you've, as you pointed out, if you go to Google, you type in something like, who's the greatest man ever, who's the greatest man in history, or something like that, Muhammad suddenly comes up number one. And I hear this from Muslims every day. David, you should just search Google. Even Google agrees that Muhammad is the greatest man ever. So they really seem to think that Google is deciding, Google has examined the evidence and concluded that Muhammad is the greatest man ever. And Google is proclaiming this because Google knows so much and it's deciding this, right? So let's just go ahead and take a look real quick at what you see when you search for who was the greatest man in history. So you see right there, I Googled who was the greatest man in history. And what do you see there? You have a ranking there, right? Rank 1, 2, 3, 4. And there you have Muhammad, number 1, Isaac Newton, number 2, Jesus, number 3, and Buddha, number 4. So those are the rankings according to Google. Right? And then you can see other things down there, like a link to Amazon's The Greatest Man in History, Muhammad, and so on. And over there on the side, you have the 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history. And then a Wikipedia article, the 100. But guess what? All of these things are referring to the same thing. Right?
Yeah. And let me make a quick comment. I am so happy to see Jesus number 3. This proves the Trinity right there.
Yeah, it's got it. Yeah, you see, it's a miracle. It's a miracle, right? But notice, this doesn't say that Google has decided that Muhammad is number 1. It specifically says Heart's Top 10 from the 1992 edition. That it puts that at the top. Right? This is not Google deciding something. It's giving a search result.
Right.
Our Muslim friends don't seem to understand very much how Google works. Google isn't making decisions on the greatest man in history. Google takes what search results, and then over time, the algorithm figures out what people are actually looking for.
That's right.
Tries to figure out what people are looking for so that when other people, so that when other people go looking for the same thing, it knows what they're trying to find in general, for the most part. Right. And what people who are generally going in search of who's the greatest man in history, what they're generally looking for is this ranking by Michael Hart. And why are they doing that? Because Muslim apologists like Ahmed Deedat and Zakir Naik and many, many others have told Muslims that because Michael Hart ranked Muhammad number 1 in his book on the most influential people in history, therefore this is somehow some kind of confirmation that Islam is true or that Muhammad is a true prophet. So let's go ahead and check out a video. We're going to check out a video where Ahmed Deedat explains this to a Muslim crowd. So here we go, Ahmed Deedat explaining the relevance of this ranking from Michael Hart.
A book has just been published in America. The title of that book is The 100. See this book? Quite an expensive book. The 100, alternatively described as the top 100 or the greatest 100 in history. The author is a certain Michael H. Hart, described as an astronomer and a mathematician. This American he goes out of his way to search in history for the 100 most influential men from Adam alayhi salam, from Adam up to current times. And he gives us a list of those 100 most influential men according to his reasoning. And the amazing thing about his list is this, that number one on his list, you can guess, is Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Number one, Muhammad.
All right, so there are other clips where Ahmed Deedat will describe this as a ranking of the greatest men of all time. And so they'll point out, look, of all the people in history, Muhammad wasn't a real prophet. How would he be the most influential man in all of history, according to Michael Hart? So they hear this from Ahmed Deedat and from Zakir Naik, and Muslims are so desperate to find some sort of confirmation for their prophet that they all start Googling. And what they're looking for is this evidence from Michael Hart. And so Google, over time, figures out this is what Muslims are looking for. So now when someone types in, who's the greatest man ever, it goes ahead and it gives them Michael Hart's reference. And Muslims take this as Google saying that Muhammad is the most influential man of all time. But notice what would happen if they just did the slightest, I mean slightest bit of investigation as to the implications of what they're saying, right? So let's go ahead and go back to what pops up now. If you look Google something like, who was the greatest man in history? So you Google who was the greatest man in history. Again, this is what pops up. And so Muslims look at this and they say, oh my goodness, it's Google ranking Muhammad as the greatest man who ever lived or as the most influential man who ever lived. No, it's giving you Michael Hart's list, which is what Deedat sent them to look up. But what happens when we click on the Wikipedia link that it's giving us, right? It's giving us the Wikipedia. Watch what happens when we click on it. So here it is. Here's what happens if we click on the Wikipedia entry. The 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history. And we read, the 100, a ranking of the most influential persons in history, is a 1978 book by Michael H. Hart, an astrophysicist, alien life researcher, and white separatist. The guy's a white separatist. He thinks white people need to separate themselves from other races to stop from being polluted by them, right?
All righty.
Published by his father's publishing house. So he gives this list of his ranking of the most influential people of all time. He gives it to his dad and says, can you publish this? And so it was his first book. It was his first book and was reprinted in 1992. With revisions. It's a ranking of the 100 people who, according to Hart, most influenced human history. Unlike various other rankings at the time, Hart explicitly wasn't attempting to rank on greatness as a criterion, but rather how the course of human history most changed due to actions of that person. So Hitler is on this list. Stalin is on this list. Chairman Mao is on this list. He puts really horrible people on this list as long as they influence history. And what happens if we actually click on Michael H. Hart right there? Notice we're saying the bare minimum. You're not doing any careful research on Michael H. Hart. Just click on what you're going. Click on where Google is sending you. Click on where Google is sending you. Let's go ahead and look. Michael H. Hart. If you click on what Michael H. Hart, here's what you find in his Wikipedia summary, which is where Google is sending you. White separatism. Hart has described himself as white separatist and is active in white separatist causes. In 1996, Hart addressed a conference organized by Jared Taylor's white separatist organization, the New Century Foundation, publisher of American Renaissance. He proposed partitioning the United States into 4 states: a white state, a black state, a Hispanic state, and an integrated mixed race state. So we could go ahead and continue, but it turns out he's actually Jewish, so he has a problem with anti-Semitic white supremacists. He believes that Jews are in the white category. And if you go into more detail on him, you find out he views Arabs as inferior people who, again, just to be clear, this is not David Wood and Al-Fadi saying this. This is Michael Hart, the guy who supposedly is confirming Islam. He believes that Arabs are intellectually inferior to white people, and that this is always going to hold their civilization back from developing. And this is where Muslims are going for their miracle. If you look at what his actual position, what he actually says in his reasoning, is he comes up with these different major categories of influence. How can a person influence the world? And so you could be a massively influential general or scientist or something like that. It's very, very rare for someone to be influential in two big categories. But he points out that Muhammad was influential in the religious category and the political category because his religion was political. And he says, therefore, I'm giving Muhammad the ranking of number one. Now notice, you could come up with all sorts of criteria what makes someone the most influential person ever. Michael Hart came up with his own method. He's an astrophysicist, an alien life researcher, a white nationalist. And he says, here's what I'm coming up with. Most other people would not agree with his methodology. But notice what Muslims are saying is somehow this guy's conclusion that Muhammad's number one is some kind of confirmation that Islam is true. If every other historian in the world disagreed, and this guy's not even a historian, at best you could say he's an amateur historian. If everyone else in the world disagreed, it would be completely irrelevant. What do? They go to the one guy who says Muhammad is the most influential man in history. And they become so obsessed with that idea, going to that idea, because they need some sort of confirmation that the prophet is real. They so desperately need that they actually influence Google search results. And once they've influenced the Google search results so that that's what pops up when they go searching for it, they then proclaim this as a miracle. Google is confirming Muhammad as a true prophet. And this is like the heart of Islamic apologetics nowadays. Utter stupidity.
Thank you, brother, as always. And hopefully our Muslim friends who are watching this have learned a couple of valuable lessons. Do your own homework. Don't listen to others. And also check the source. At the end of the day, the source may not be as reliable as you may think. Thank you, brother. Thank you, everyone. This is Al-Fadi over and out. God bless you. Take care. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, CIRA International, and click on the bell so that you receive notifications whenever we publish a new video or go live. I would also like to appeal to you to consider becoming a Patreon patron by clicking the link right below. By doing so, you can give towards the production of these videos. There are also other options for you where you can give to our channel. I thank you from the bottom of my heart.